And good afternoon. It is Thursday, July the 24th, 2025. Well, and we're back in studio again, and you know what? It just feels so good to be back.
It does, doesn't it?
Oh, it does, because, I think, you know what, it honestly feels like we haven't worked a day in our lives because we enjoy what we do so much.
Absolutely. And the vacation was lovely, but it's good to be back.
No, I agree there too. I agree there too. So, I want to start. I'm going to start with you. What was maybe a little bit of something you read over our vacation?
Sure. So I didn't actually get in as much reading as I maybe would have hoped to, but I found some time. And something that I picked up and started as I was kind of setting out and on the vacation was this book called Hench. I believe it's by Natalie Zena Walschaerts, I think is how you pronounce it. And it's kind of set in this world where there are superheroes and supervillains kind of integrated into everyday life. So it's just sort of, it is a fact to this world that there are these people who do these things. And the main character is a woman who kind of works for a temp agency working for different villains. And where I'm at, she kind of gets into this accident where she's been injured in an altercation by a superhero who is someone who you're assuming is supposed to do good things, but actually causes all this like damage and harm, like in these acts of supposedly saving something from happening or preventing one thing, but causing a lot of other collateral damage. And I don't really know where it's supposed to go from here, but it's kind of a neat concept. It was something kind of interesting and fun to get into at the time. And the other thing I've really been getting into keeping in was getting a lot more of Daisy Jones and the Six read, which is going to sound ridiculous because we've been reading this book for quite a while, but still chipping away at it, and I got a lot more of it done. So those were kind of the main two that I've been going through.
Yeah, that sounds like it's all it's all interesting interesting reads because yeah, Daisy, like, you know what, like, it's kind of interesting because then when you read a book like that, like the first one there, you
Mhm.
kind of imagine what the character is, sort of like, you sort of put yourself in the character's shoes, kind of.
It does allow you to, because as much as something like superheroes and supervillains is so unrealistic and so sort of out of this world, it keeps it very grounded because it talks about her just having this like corporate desk job, which is kind of amusing in the context of having like superheroes and things, but it keeps it very much, as you say, where you can sort of put yourself in her shoes and be like, oh, she's just like, it's just another corporate job. She's just trying to get through, even though she's maybe not helping to bring the best things about.
Yeah, no, and then that, like, a lot of, like, there are like a lot of different types of books like that where where they don't really bring the best, like, in terms of the abouts, right? Like, even though, and sometimes it's a case where the character may have a good intention, but depending on how the book is or what the plot is, it just seems to kind of sometimes it kind of brings out a bit of an interesting cycle, doesn't it?
I agree with you because sometimes, and this is with reality too, but I find it especially
yeah.
fascinating in certain books where someone's best intentions might actually bring about quite unfortunate or undesirable outcomes because what they think is best and what they actually perceive as being good and right might not necessarily be. And there are other times in a book where even if they're the main character, even if they're the person you're supposed to be following, they might not actually have the best intentions. They might be a bit flawed or a bit skewed, or what you might as a reader find to be skewed, because really that's quite subjective.
Yeah, you know what? Like, I'm more than, I'm more than happy, if you, I'm more than happy to, kind of like, to dissect the book further if you want together.
Maybe I'll get a little further in and see maybe how I feel, but it's definitely a possibility we can look at.
There we go. Why not? We can certainly do that. No, I was thinking maybe we could do that for the next show if you want.
Oh, sure, we could do that.
If you want.
Yeah. And what have you been reading and getting into?
Yeah, so aside from the ones that we've been reading together,
Mm-hmm.
I got into, and I know you did see my updates.
Sure did.
That I've been cruising along into Down and Back by Justin Bourne, which is his book on basically what he calls it family, alcohol, and hockey. He actually, and it, so just to kind of give a recap, his brother, I don't know about but at the time that the book was written, or at the time he was growing up, was in a wheelchair.
Mm-hmm.
And perhaps still is. Like I don't know. I don't know. I don't know at this point, but he and it was just kind of interesting because I mean his like also too his dad was an alcoholic, and like his parents ended up separating, and later in his life he became an alcoholic as well. And then seeked help and got things kind of back on track after 2019.
That sounds really interesting, especially it kind of comes across, and you can correct me, of course, because you're the one reading it, but it almost comes across as the generational cycle of maybe having a parent who's an alcoholic, and then sort of whatever causes that person to then come into that themselves. And of course, there are, I'm sure, other factors in his life that maybe led him to that. But it's sometimes a bit of a cycle that can occur, I suppose.
Yeah, well, no, actually, you put that really actually, that's a very accurate way of putting it. And, but I kind of want to take it a little bit into a second sort of step.
Okay.
It's sort of on a bit of a generalization as well as specifics that kind of tied into it, kind of ties in, that oftentimes what happens, and he was a player, he did play in the NHL as well. He's an analyst now, by the way, at Sportsnet. If you want to check out his work, yeah, he did the Real Kipper and Born podcast as well, and with Nick Kyprios. But see, the thing is that you don't typically you don't typically know, like, a lot of the times people look at athletes and judging by what they see on the surface, they go by that, hey, you know what, that they have everything and this and that. It's the same thing when it comes to Hollywood stars. You often hear. But the reality is, they really don't. Because what sometimes happens, like as we see in this particular case, is while they may have everything, while they may have fame and they may have money and they have a career of playing pro hockey or pro sports in general, doesn't mean that things are what you see on the ice. Because there is that human personal side too. And there's that sort of side where is sort of what I sort of mean, that on the edge of that they don't have everything. Your turn.
Yeah, you put that very eloquently, and I think you definitely hit the nail on the head, where whether it's someone in sports or, as you say, Hollywood, or a musician, just you only get a certain image when they do their job, when they perform, or when they play. You know, you don't see everything, and it's really easy to look at them and go, oh, they have all of this, they have the fame, they have the prestige that sort of comes with that, they must have such an incredible life. But as you just described, it can often be a very different picture, because they're a person, because they're not just what we're observing in the public. And I think it would be fascinating to get into that book at some point too. I think it's either on our personal list that we've got going, or it's on the panel list. But either way, it would be great to get around to that too.
Let's do it. And how about this? Go ahead.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
I also do think that some of what we're talking about here, you can see it, just circling back very briefly to Daisy Jones.
Yeah!
I think you see a lot of it, because especially later on in the book, like, again, this is a fictional band. It's not based on a real group, although I've seen people make the argument where it somewhat feels like Fleetwood Mac or something like this, but it's not a one-for-one comparison of any band that exists. But you see a lot of this where they are rising and they are becoming quite popular, but especially the two main characters struggle with a lot of different things that have nothing to do with their fame and everything to do with it at the same time, I think.
Well, and that's... yeah, I mean, that's sort of where it sort of stems, doesn't it? Because when we don't like when one doesn't know what actually happens in, like, there are two, like, the thing is that there's two sort of, there are two like there are two sides, right? The there's the life on the ice in this in that particular book, and then we'll kind of come back to Daisy Jones here. There,
Of course.
yeah, there's the life on the ice, and there's the life off the ice, where that's where kind of you don't know what's going on. And when it comes to Daisy Jones and the Six, yeah, that's another example where, yes, it's a fictional band, but where the same sort of idea kind of goes, because you've got two opposite personalities of kind of working together there.
Mm-hmm. And they're each sort of dealing with their own personal struggles, conflicts that come from either working together or come from where they've each been individually, and how those things don't necessarily align.
Yeah, yeah, and you know, that's like the fascination of these.
It is. It makes it much more interesting to read and engage with.
Yeah. Right. So that's like that is really where the like that's kind of where things like that is kind of where things sort of like it's the way things are perceived in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe not from a sense of how we may perceive it, but how somebody else might perceive it too.
What do you mean by that?
Well, like everybody's level of perception will be different. So if they, you know, some just might look at the on ice piece, or just look at going with the one person or with the one sort of personality trait and going, well, this is what, you know, this is what is the concept here.
Mm-hmm. Kind of like that is the narrative they see, that is what they go with, therefore that must be who that person is.
Yes. That is the correct interpretation, yeah, of, yeah, because that's kind of the piece here, because I feel like one of the things that where like where it sort of becomes, and like my interpretation, I think I've learned a lot from these different types of books, that I would never just judge it I never judge it based on what is on the surface and what's on the ice, or what you see in the public eye. That's what I mean.
Right, which I think is really interesting, because in a lot of ways, and yes, I agree, we can learn a lot from these books, and you can learn a lot from just making the choice to look a little deeper, or not just to accept what is on the surface for 100%, not truth, but as the entire picture or scope of something.
No, I would have
And
been okay if you would have said truth.
I think it's a little bit of both. But what is interesting too is the fact that we as, like, say sports fans, or we as fans of people or their work, kind of make that choice of whether to look deeper or whether to just accept the surface level as truth. And some people, as you say, perceptions differ with everyone. So there'll be those who choose to only look at the surface and don't care to look deeper because they only want to see it one way, or they're just not that invested. And that's fine. You don't have to be. But I think it's a choice that we make.
It is. And it is. And the other thing, too, is that not everything comes out, right? Like, that is another side of it as well, that not everything comes out either, and then they just it's whatever a person chooses to share, or whatever they decide to make public. That's when it comes to the outside sort of image.
Exactly. And then what sort of the consequences of that choice are in terms of what their perception becomes by the public, or what people take that to mean.
Yes, that is correct. Yes, that is certainly, yeah. And you know what? And I always personally find it interesting when you hear about, or when you hear about what a person a person goes through, or or even what like the off ice piece, right? That,
Mm-hmm.
or the second part of it, right? That's really my piece as well. Like, I mean, and we sure, and there's always there's always a lot to cover when it comes to these things. How about this? How about we check to see if it's on the books panel list? Then then you stay tuned to that show, and if it's not, then we'll discuss that here as well.
That sounds great. And even if it's not on that list, stay tuned to that show anyway, because it's great.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yes, yeah, absolutely. Well, yes, and of course the broadcast map show as well.
Absolutely.
So, speaking of which, when is the next live airing of the panel, and what will be the topic?
Well, in fact, the next books panel is tomorrow night, July 25th at, I believe it's 7 p.m. Eastern. And the topic is the book Pierre Poilievre, A Political Life by Andrew Lawton.
Yeah, that's a fascinating book as well. It's a very interesting book. So, you want to hear my thoughts on that? We will direct you to that show. And where can they find it? I mean, the live airing, that is.
The live airing, that'll be on the YouTube channel, which is the books panel. So definitely head over there and subscribe. Turn on your notifications, or you can check the website, bookspanel.ca, for the updates. That's where we'll have the reminders in the next day or so that you'll know exactly when to keep an eye out for that live. It's very much the same setup we've got going here. So if you like how we do things and you like how you can get your updates and notifications, it's very similar over there.
Well, there we go. It's called consistency, right?
It is, and it's important.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
And you've had quite a number of shows on Broadcast Map lately that people should go check out, yes?
Absolutely. Yes. They really should check that out. I just recently we did a conversation with NHL historian Liam McGuire, and feel free to include links to that when for those that like, if you're not like, if you're listening later to this, like to feel free that is also included there, as well as I did have a chance to also chat broadcasting with Amanda Shikarshi. And I don't know if there's I can't remember if there's anybody before that I think those were the two, I think.
Fantastic. Well, I'll be sure to pop those links in with the show notes. And as you say, if people want to check it out when they're listening later, they absolutely should. And just worth mentioning that is always where the relevant links and information can be found, whether you're listening on the website or if you're listening on other platforms. All the links you could want are usually in the show notes.
Yes, so which is another reason that we recommend, as you mentioned earlier, that you subscribe to the newsletters. That way, you will never miss a thing.
Exactly. Now, speaking of newsletters and updates, I believe the next order of business is where to find our show.
Yes, that's coming up as well. But how about we can also do a broadcast map rundown.
Oh yes, of course. Why don't you go ahead with that?
All right. Well, the Major League Baseball trade deadline is coming up. So, on Tuesday, July the 29th, 2025, Scott Belford returns to the airwaves, who is the host of the Walk Off podcast, which is a Blue Jays podcast, to talk about what the Jays could be looking at, since they've been on a bit of a winning streak here. And of course, and they just took 2 out of 3 from the New York Yankees at the time as well. So they're definitely on a roll. And then on August the 4th, Rod Mahood returns for some NHL and Blue Jays chat. And then on August the 7th, we are going to be chatting with Paul Daniel. We're going to be talking about all the major sort of news and political stories that have been going on. So keep an eye out for all of that content as well. And this show and Ali and McCara's books is also is part of
the Broadcast Map Network.
So now the next piece is, where do people find us?
Well, you've got Discord, which is a big one, Ali and McCara's books, for the updates, for putting personal recommendations that you think we should read, for answering poll questions when we have them, for any of that stuff, just for reaching out and wanting a chat. We've got the website for the updates, aliandmccarasbooks.ca. That is where they go up first, so you definitely want to be subscribed over there. The YouTube channel, Ali and McCara's Books. We always encourage people to subscribe over there. That is where we go live. that is where you can catch the shows later if you want, but live is really great. And, of course, the podcast platforms: Apple, Spotify, Amazon, TuneIn, iHeart, all of the things, if that's how you prefer to listen to shows and things. Goodreads, we have a group over there. Ali and Makara's books. We also have our personal profiles if you want to keep up with what we've been reading.
Well, you know what? There are lots of places to find us, and we always encourage you to keep tabs on what we are doing when it comes to these shows, because at the end of the day, we are always interested in good conversations.
Absolutely. We want to hear what you think. We'd love to hear just from listeners in general. So it would be great if you can find all these places, keep up, maybe drop a comment if you feel like it. We would really appreciate it.
Yep, and if you don't use any of the podcasting platforms, you can just listen on the website to do that, and on the YouTube as well.
Oh yeah, those are always great options.
It actually brings traffic to the website too, so that's also good.
Oh yeah. And we will be back on Monday, July the 28th, I believe, at 4 p.m. So definitely be sure to stay tuned for that.
Yes, and it's 3 p.m. Winnipeg time as well, so.
That it is, yes.
Well, you know what? It's been fun being back. I'm already excited for the next show.
As am I.